Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Broman Show, episode 150. We made it to 150 episodes. I can't believe it, but we're here, and I'm excited for this week's guest, Rukari Austin. How are you?
I'm doing
Rukari,
well, thank you.
welcome.
I just got home from Hawaii yesterday, so I'm excited to get back to my routine, my regimen, and I'm excited to hop on here and chop it up with you for a bit.
Yeah,
ease my way back into the work week.
Yeah, nice, relaxing conversation about what is the reason that you do everything that you do. No, but legitimately, Rukari, I have the we've had the pleasure of making each other's acquaintances. But before that, I saw you everywhere, doing everything, hosting all kinds of events, and during a time when I was really focused on streaming, and that's kind of the world that I was in. I watched you just sort of like rise through the ranks everywhere I looked for hosting gigs. And I remember thinking, I was like, one day I hope I get to talk to him and find out how this works. So I'd like to start there. People, where might people recognize you from?
Oh, see, I like
if they're tuning in for the first time.
The onus of responsibility on me to gas myself up. Oh man. So no, I've done a plethora of things. I spent about a decade working at Xbox and, a bunch of projects from Age of Empires to Halo, Xbox Live Arcade, Killer Instinct. And eventually at some point they realized I could run my mouth. And then I realized that was a tangible skill. So you could recognize me from things like the E3 stage, he casually stated. Way back in 2016, along with random product videos, right? When I worked on Halo or when I worked on KI, we would always do these kind of video updates or patch notes. And then I've done some like Xbox marketing materials through the years, a bunch of freelance work, hosted things for Verizon Media and NBA Top Shot. And it's just been a whirlwind adventure across the internet, but mostly Xbox. You've probably seen me on something Xbox related. Inside Xbox
E3. I didn't have the full list of everything that you've done in front of me, so I would usually gas you up. I just want to say, like Rukari has done the things that like gamers dreamed of. Like when I was 10, when I was 15, I was like, if I could work for Xbox and like host E3, man, that would be sick. And you've done that. And you do it well. That's the thing. I think that when people watch any content where there's a host, it's one of those roles where people don't really notice if you're awesome at it, but they really notice if you're bad. Like they're like, wow, that was a terrible host. So like, I'm really curious what got you into hosting, because a good host can make or break a show. And it's kind of intimidating role to step into. So I'm like really curious, what made you think like, I want to do that?
It was never that I wanted to go do that. As a matter of fact, I still struggle with the fact that I feel like I'm just being me. What got me into it was sort of a need and a place in my addiction to tech and camera gear. And I guess let's rewind to the beginning-ish. I got hired on the Age of Empires team, my first ever industry job, my first ever, I'll say real job, right? I worked in retail stores. I worked for a buddy that owned a mattress company. We did deliveries, we sold. But my first real corporate job was with the Age of Empires team. And 3 weeks after I was hired, my then manager, Kristen Riley, who's now Kristen Booty, Matt Booty's wife, left. And there was this void created, right? And in that void, somebody said, well, we need to write these updates. We need to do this. We need to do that. And I said, hey, I'll take a stab at it. I wrote the thing. They said, hey, do you want to keep doing this? There's a point to this, but at a certain point they said, hey, you've been writing. How do you feel about creating video content? And I feel bad that my response was, it was just that. And they said, well, have you shot video before? And I was like, my boss, we lived in the same neighborhood. She understood. Like we were very good friends. And I was like, you know where I'm from. I was not fully Section 8, but there's no way I could afford a video camera. I've never used one in my life. Great. Here's a video camera. Go figure it out. And I was like, for real? And they handed me a video camera and they handed me Premiere and said, let's go make some fun clips for social. Let's figure out how to do it. Here's some, how-to tools. And we started from there. Anyway, eventually that evolved into working on, we'll say Killer Instinct, for example. After a few live streams and whatnot, KI said, wouldn't it be fun if we did video updates? You know, instead of just a patch note list, let's show our gameplay and the move in action that we've changed so people can get a, you know, a visual and a visceral learning from this. So in doing that, I didn't realize that people internally were watching and saying, hey, this guy hosting the thing, which was me, is good at that. So eventually somebody came up. E3 was the very first one that I think of as being big and official. Again, I did live streams and I did all this. And they said, Rukari, do you want to do E3? And it was probably a career limiting move, but I was like, oh, you guys need a black person in the lineup. And then, oh yeah, those first words out of my mouth. Again, how I kept a job for as long as I did, I don't know. But they kind of stumbled and they went, no, you're just really good on video. And I was like, all right, I know what it is. I'm going to watch you. But that's sort of how it evolved. So it was never anything that I chased down. And when I did the E3 stage, I remember the acting coach that was backstage with us, and he takes you through these prompts, and they were just fun. We were messing around, and he's having you sit there and you go, I want you to say from your chest, I own this stage. And we're doing all this stuff, and he's watching me, and he was like, oh, like, where have you studied? And I was like, study what? Like, what are we talking about? He's like, well, you know your presenter voice. And I was like, well, homie, I grew up, you know, in the hood and went to a private school. Like, I know how to code switch. I grew up in sales. I know how to talk to my audience. And he's like, you'll have no idea how far that goes. And so I got up on stage and I did the thing. And to your point, you talk about a good host and a bad host. I still don't know what that looks like, but everybody said, that was great. Do you want to do more? And stepping through that one door opened up all sorts of opportunity. So really, really long, boring story short, I fell into this and I have no idea how. I've always known that I was not afraid of crowds, but I always thought that people just spoke. Like, all my friends are loud and obnoxious like me. I feel like I'm drawn to people that have that same sort of boisterous attitude. It's just, it's unapologetically me. So for anybody aspiring to do the thing, I feel bad because I don't have the secret ingredient.
I feel like the secret ingredient for like any good host is always that they take you on the journey of experience, like whatever you're hosting, right? They take you on that journey with them. And for me, it's always the authenticity that makes me connect with a good host. And that's like a good host E3, a good late night host, anybody. It's the curiosity and the confidence with which, you know, people can go and explore new ideas and new stuff. That's what always draws me in for a good host. So I think you have the secret. It's just really hard because that secret is like, it's true to the individual, but it's different for everyone, right? Everyone's authenticity, you know, lies somewhere else. You can't, you know, if you're an introvert, trying to be a big boisterous host is probably not going to play off very well, but you can still, I've met plenty of people that are introverts that are really good hosts.
Absolutely. And sometimes I felt like I'm the introvert because I'm the person, I feel like I run both lines, right? I could be at a party and if I want to talk, I will. And at the same time, I look and I go, I could really be at home right now. That could be age. That could be the fact that I've got, you know, kids and whatnot. But yeah, I agree that it is about that authenticity. And I've always thought of it as BS, but I guess it comes off as authentic. I'm almost apathetic, right? You know, I love live events more than I like pre-recorded events because live events, you just have to run and you just have to go. And if you stumble and fall, well, what are you going to do? You get right back up and keep going. Yeah. Like you're going to stumble and fall. That's why I played sports. I've missed more shots than I've, you know, made in my life. I'm used to failing. So live, you just get up and go. And I think that helps me be me, right? I don't care about the thing, whatever. We're just going to do it and go have fun. And hopefully that comes across in a positive light.
I mean, from my perspective, I think yes, absolutely, it comes across excellent. So you kind of fell into this, taking just by like saying yes, seeing where it's going to go. You find out you had this natural talent. I really like when you meet someone who's a professional in a field and they cannot fathom like how you could be good at the thing if you haven't studied it. Like it's like they've been doing it for I don't know, especially with acting. I'm like, man, you've been doing it for so long. You've seen so many people who suck at acting that if you just like see someone who can present themselves, they're like, oh, you must have gone to Juilliard. Like it to me, I love things like that because we all have such unique talents, like as people. And sometimes we can sort of diminish different aspects of like what we know how to do or our personality. Like I'm a really loud person as well. And it makes hosting things or hosting my stream feel really easy. And people say, "Oh, how did you learn how to talk all the time?" And I was like, "I was talking to myself all the time my whole life. Like this isn't any different. I'm just, taking the words and putting them out of my mouth from my head." And they're like, "You're really good at that." And I think that, at least from when I was growing up, like I wasn't taught that was a valuable skill, just being able to talk, right? Nobody was walking up and being like, "Man, you really know how to articulate details about an issue in a way that helps me understand it. Good job." Like, you know what I mean? And so when we grow up, we can miss these things. I think it's really exciting. That's one of the things I love the most about getting older. Your incredible skill has allowed you to meet some really awesome folks traveling around the world. You've done interviews with Phil Spencer, Vin Diesel, all sorts of folks. What is that like? Was that difficult being like, "Oh wow, this is like a celebrity," or did it feel like another day on the job?
So again, to know a little bit about the work I do, you got to know me in that sense. And I talked about being an athlete, and I think that helped me. And helped me go a long way because I was used to seeing people who went on to become famous. I played a little bit of college basketball, not a lot to brag about. Yes, you can look at me and tell that boy must have been an athlete. Like there's something. On the plane last night, folks were asking me. But the fun part in that is I got to see that a lot of athletes were knuckleheads just like I was, right? They were nothing special, and yet people revered them because they could put a ball in a hoop, better than others, or they could catch a ball or run faster. And I was like, you mean this nerd from down the street that, that likes the same sort of anime stuff that I do? Like we watch Dragon Ball together and y'all talking about him. But I think that helped as I went on, through the interactions that I had, because I never looked at anybody as special. And that sounds so dismissive. But again, I talk about that lethargic or sort of apathetic bit where you're just like, it's just another person. Like they're going to have their fun stories and whatnot. And the authenticity came from a laziness of, I don't have an agenda when I talk to these folks. So anyway, it wasn't difficult because really I was like, this is cool. And I'm just going to talk to them and talk about the things that I'd want to talk about. And I'll slip in the work points that they want me to hit. There's always the guy in your ear, make sure you say this thing. I'm like, yeah, shut up.
Yeah.
Let's ask you about this other thing first. So there was one difficult one, and that was The Rock. And that was only difficult because I felt bad for the guy. And it was like the never meet your heroes type bit. Not that he was, but we were on the set of Skyscraper, which is still mind blowing to say.
Whoa.
And yeah, so we're up in Vancouver, BC. He's filming that. And he's also doing a Make-A-Wish charity grant, which was part of the reason why we're here. But he was running from station to station. And I felt bad because you know what it means to be on. I mean, you definitely know what you're doing when you're presenting and when you go down. And that dude was on the entire time. And I'm like, I know that's not Dwayne. I know I'm not meeting Dwayne Johnson. I'm meeting The Rock. And it was kind of like oh. And that was the one that I was geeking out for and whatever. But everyone else, it feels like name dropping. But Ronda Rousey was one of the most fun ones because she showed up 2 or 3 hours before the shoot because she had to get her hair washed, do her makeup and all that. And I'm telling you, we sat in the makeup chairs right next to each other and we were talking about music. And she's like, you got any music? And I was like, man, do we have a speaker? And we found a little portable speaker. And I was like, well, what do you want to hear? She's like, oh, let's put on Michael Jackson. And we were singing along to Michael Jackson radio while she's getting her hair and makeup done, talking about her chickens on her farm. And she's excited to get back to it. Mind you, this is post Holly Holm, but pre WWE announcement. So she was just talking about life and chilling. And I was like, this is the most down to earth person I've ever met.
That's so cool.
The truth is, if you can find a way to talk to these people and get the people inside, you have more interactions like Rhonda than you do like The Rock. And you get a chance to really sit there and talk to them. So no, there's no fear in going into those conversations, not because I think less of them, but I don't know. I've been able to just not care about them. They're great. I'm excited. It's dope. But yeah, you're the same as me. You're a goofy kid who happens to be famous.
Yeah, famous. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, no, I get stopped places sometimes. I guess that's all that counts, right? Yeah. I can't let the Twitch trolls run my head. But like, so you brought up a couple things that I think would be like super interesting. I'd love to get your perspective more on. So you talk about being on, which is definitely something I think anybody who is hosting like has. You have the ritual to like getting to the state where you're like, all right, presentation me. And at least for me, like I have to work into it and I have to work out of it. So like, what does that like ramp up and then recovery look like for you? Or are you one of the lucky people who are just like, oh, just like that, and then I'm ready to go?
Yeah. Again, I talk about the BS and being full of crap, and you know what I'm terrible at is rehearsals. I am so bad. If you tell me the cameras are not on, damn it, I'm not on. Like I'll be reading the thing. Okay, yeah, there's just a juice. There's something to. Okay, you gotta go. That makes me just go. I need to work on it to the point where I'm actually investigating like improv classes because I want to work on. I hate to say taking things seriously, but you know, doing the steps to get ready versus just going. Okay, we gotta go. So yeah, I am one of the lucky folks that's just like, okay, I'll be messing around. Like, here we are. Huh? Oh, how long? Okay, 1 minute. Okay. And I'm just waiting for the countdown. Then it's like 3, 2, 1. And it just comes up. I hearken this back to growing up. My dad owned a barbecue restaurant. We lived in that restaurant. This is how we escaped poverty and whatnot. But in that restaurant, it was just like a customer would walk up and you had to put on the BS immediately. Say, hey, how you doing? What can I get you? And I think that's where I learned to just be able to go back and forth very quick. I could be doing my thing and talking, and then I had to switch. Hey, what's going on? What can I do for you? And it's something now that's almost second nature and effortless. But yeah, I do terrible if I have to rehearse. And I'm like, I swear this read will be better when I do it live. No, we want you to get the words right. I was like, I can't. Goes live, goes off without a hitch. So yeah, I have a reason for it, but yeah.
I mean, I think that is, again, right? Like there are things that we pick up along the way in our life that turn into these incredibly powerful skills. Like that's like, I would like pay a psychologist a lot of money to be like, all right, hack my brain. How do I, but even you mentioned like rehearsals, like I also hate rehearsing. It drives me nuts. And I feel like when I rehearse too much, I start second guessing. And then I'll just memorize an entirely different script than they've given me. Got to do an ad with Twitch where I had to read a very specific script. And it must have taken me an hour to get through the thing. And it was just people's names. And I was like apologizing to the dude that was shooting it. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm not usually like, it's not usually this difficult for me. And he kept giving me the eyes, and I like to go into my bag of like, I do have learning disabilities. Like, just give me an effing break. I have dyslexia, like whatever. And eventually he was just like, I don't know if that counts for this. And I was like, okay, I better get it right. He's starting to get like real edgy about stuff. And I don't that always, I'm like, all right, I'll keep moving. But that like rehearsing is always like really hard for me because it gets me to the point where I'm overthinking. And that will, when you need to be in the moment, especially for like a live show, that can really mess you up. Like if something pops into your head and you like drift off into space, like the camera's still on. Do you have any special protections that you set up before you have to like go on stage, or like, you have to, like, let's say you had to be live like all day, right? Or you're producing all day. Is it like, I need to, my phone's on airplane mode, like no one can contact me, so I don't need anything like knocking me off my, my even keel approach to this, because I have a hard time with, if there's some weird ass news that comes across my, my feed, I'll go, oh shit. And then it's like, I'm completely somewhere else.
I'm trying to think of the events that I've done where I've needed to be live all day. So we'll take E3 as an example. That one we rehearsed to death. I can still tell you that my bit was 53 seconds long. Our total runtime, our TRT for the whole KI section was about 1:38. The rest of that was the trailer where we introduced General Rom. I still know my lines. I still know my lines because we did it that many times and they made us be that precise. And that was the one time, I think, because of the environment, that they make you like rehearse as if live. And it felt live. I was on my spot in the stage. There weren't thousands of people in the crowd, but you're sitting there, you're hitting your cues and where you're going to look at which camera. In that sense, rehearsing felt fine. It's when I do some of these smaller things, like when we would do the live sessions with celebrities and whatnot, yeah, that I just want to jump into and, you know, go as is. But in regards to any special things, this is the self-deprecation part that you guys can chastise me for, but I've never felt professional enough to where I've gone to study my craft to get better about it. And I need to do that. At the same time, I've been focusing on my actual job and haven't had as much work. Thank you, COVID. So I haven't had the opportunities to really go and reflect and say, hey, how are you getting better at this with your presenting? But when it comes to doing all day stuff, there's nothing that I've really found that I need to do at this moment to keep me in check or in line. If we're going, it's really just that tally light on the camera. If that thing is red, I got to go. And then I've just learned that there's an appreciation for a style, again, which I call BS, that has helped me go forward. That's been my hardest blocker. Is you don't have to say it like anybody else. You don't have to be a Major Nelson or AC Bongos. For some odd reason that I can't explain, people are okay with Rukari and I can just go be him. So that's helped me. So I don't have to turn off the phone or focus up. It's just like, all right, go be you.
This is like probably one of the coolest interviews I've ever done, because for me, everybody I've had on gets on and they'll talk about content creation. They'll talk about authenticity, and it means something really different to everyone else. And it means something different to everyone, but like you're just like this embodiment of being completely authentic and having these natural skills that you've picked up over the course of your life. And it's just turned into the guy everyone wants to hire. Yeah. And it is, you know, as you've said a few times, I'm sure it's like kind of like, it's always hard, at least for me, it's hard for me to accept like, oh, these are the things that I'm really good at and other people can see these things. And it's tough sometimes, but it's really exciting to me that we're getting to have this conversation, because the level at which you are being authentically yourself, which is essentially all the time, it's the same person when the camera light flips on, like you just said. It's really cool, because most people think that they have to tweak this or that about themselves in order to succeed, and it's just not the case.
And I thought that too, and I thought that for a long time. So when I first appeared on Inside Xbox, I don't know if you remember, but they had what they called the social desk, right? And I had a giant, first of all, I love the toy. They gave me a giant, like the Surface table or whatever it was. So I'm sitting there playing on the Surface, and they had Tagboard, I think was the app that we were using. So people were able to write in to Xbox, like tweet in, and we could feature their bits on the show. So I was actually at this table and I could click on fun things and talk about it. And that was my segment, was a live look at what people were saying about the show. So I was unscripted in the first 2 or 3 episodes, right? At this table, talking about what people were laughing at, having my fun. I almost quit Inside Xbox because I thought I was just shucking and jiving, dead ass, I use those words, while Larry and Graham were delivering news, because I wanted to match their style. And I was like, they're sitting here presenting and they're prim and proper and they're speaking in such a manner and holding still. And then there's me up there literally as Sideshow Bob or the entertainment, like messing around. And I felt not bad. I'm trying to figure out what was the way I felt. I just, not even undervalued or underused. I just did not believe in what I was doing. It wasn't until E3 later that year, because I think we started filming in February or March. So yeah, we had 3 or 4 episodes done by then. Go to E3, and you know, we talk about like being able to be representation up on stage too. So there's a few black folks that came up to me and said, "Hey man, you're the dude from Xbox. Yeah, what's up? You know, what's going on?" You start talking to them, and they said, "What shoes are you wearing?" And I was like, "Oh, why do you ask?" You must know I love my shoes. And they said, "Well, yeah, we notice you wear a different pair every episode. So we wanted to see what you got on now. And I was like, oh, you noticed that? And they were like, yeah, are you kidding us? You're the only dude up there that talks like us. Like, you sit up there and you have fun and you're not worried about what others are thinking. I'm like, little do y'all know that I have been. So I remember that being a very poignant part. I told Inside Xbox I wanted to be done because I didn't like that I was just doing that thing. It took those people telling me that there was value in me being unapologetically me for me to understand that what I was doing meant something to others. Not even to others, should mean something to me. That having my own stuff, that I deserve to be up there no matter what I looked and or sounded like. Was never worried about my clothes, but yeah, more so how I sounded. So it took a while to find that, to understand that authenticity goes a long way.
It's really difficult. And when you're sitting in the room with people who are just like, they have iconic ways of presenting information, right? That, like Major Nelson, like everybody you know what to expect when he's talking to you, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and I think, I've had a really kind of similar experience when it comes to coming into your own as an entertainer, right? Like you see the blueprints that everyone else has put out there, but I feel like there's a point, and it's like every hero's story, like where you cross through to that place where no one else, like no one can tell you what's on the other side of that, right? Like, you can take hosting classes, you can take improv classes, you can hone your craft. You can have like a wealth of life experience leading into something, but if you start that journey into your authentic self and you have this blueprint that you're trying to bring with you, it does hold you back. I have gone through a few phases in my career as a streamer where I was like, ooh, that part of my personality kind of bothered somebody, so I'm just gonna like smash it, right? And I'll just try to completely shut off this part or that part of my personality for entertainment's sake. Mm-hmm. And I did all that shit to my dramatic detriment, right? Because what happens, man, I'm being super open. Like, what happens when you do things like that, when you take a part of your personality and you just say, like, no more, like, no one gets to see this. This isn't part of me going out there and presenting and entertaining. It has a compounding effect. You don't realize how the different aspects of your personality feed each other until you start to be like, oh, no, we don't do that anymore. And then you have these other aspects. For me, it was like humor. I was like, why can't I be funny anymore? I was like, why can't I just like think of a joke? And it's because I had decided like, okay, well, these things are, I don't want people to see me get emotional, or I don't want to see people to see me react as much as I used to. I'm just trying to temper these parts of my personality. And it didn't ever work out for me. It always ended up being that like I'd come on stream one day and I would just be like, whatever, fuck it. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to be myself. And then at the end of the day, everyone's like, great stream, bro, man. I don't know what you were doing today, but man, it was awesome. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is what I needed to be doing all along. So I guess my question inside of all of that is, if you've attempted to sort of edit things like that before, how did that go? If not, what did you use to sort of stave off that pressure? Because it exists when you're in a high performing environment with other successful people. You think, oh, what if I sample the way they do this, right? So I'm really curious about that.
Trial and error is the biggest one. That whole scenario that I just gave you there is exactly what I went through and kind of how I got through it. But there's other little fun stories that help me when it comes to being on camera. And there's also a bit of laziness. Like, I will fully admit that it's because of my ability to just go live. I rarely prep because I love in the moment things. And when I say I rarely prep, for instance, the Ronda Rousey interview or whomever, we did one with designer. I'm not reading up on folks creating an agenda. It was always let's see how we can talk and get through this, but everything presents an opportunity to learn and get better. So there's other times on Inside Xbox, right? The very first episode, I remember we're about to go live and they're doing the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2. And at 2, I go, Larry, why are your knees touching? Because he was standing, that Larry stance where he's, his legs are together and his knees were touching. And Graham is dying, Jeff is dying, and I'm cracking up. And at the end of the show, we got a tweet that said, "Hey, good job, Rukari. You know, it looked like you were a little nervous out there, but it was cool to see you up there. You know, you were rocking back and forth." And I was like, "What? Nervous? Like I wasn't nervous. Like, this is fun." And then I realized in that moment, Larry was standing next to me and he wasn't rocking back and forth because his legs were together. And I go, so I look at him and I was like, "That's why your knees were locked." And I remember he tapped me on the back. He's like, "You'll start to learn the tricks, kid." And just walked off. And I was like, "You cool mother sucker, you. Like, ain't this about it?" Anyway, I bring that up to say, you take moments throughout everything that you do to pull and learn how to better yourself or your craft, whatever you want to call it. Like, you'll find opportunities to have a moment where you're like, "Oh, this is how I can do this and still be me." Even with myself cracking jokes, I found that if I don't know the subject matter, I'm not going to work in a joke. Or I'm not going to, if I don't know the subject matter, I have a higher chance of working in a joke because I can react and people find value in that reaction. So it's just being open, seeing opportunities to try something and not being afraid to jump. I'm the type that likes to beg for forgiveness rather than ask for permission. So I'll get that little, that shit-eating grin, like, I'm about to do something. If they want to talk to me, they're going to have to talk to me after this is live. So that's how I found the way to be me.
I like that. And there are things, what a great tip about I'm sitting here trying. I was like, what is it? Oh, it is. Yeah. I'm more anchored. I don't want to sway around. Picking up things along the way from folks that have been doing it is great.
And you can't learn it without failing. Let me throw that out there. Technically, I failed in that I was moving to a point where somebody thought I was nervous. Yes. And I was just more upset that they thought I was nervous. So I was like, I can do better if I do this one thing.
Mm-hmm. It's that taking criticism, right? That's something that I've heard before. Like, "Oh, you look nervous," or "You look whatever." Like, people say that shit to you when you're streaming all the time. "Why is this guy so angry?" And I'm just like, because I don't want to fucking die. Like, I'm playing Elden Ring. Like, what do you mean? Why am I angry? I've been on this boss for 3 hours. Like, what are you doing? Stuff like that. But being able to take some, that's an obvious, fuck that person. But sometimes you do get pieces of feedback that are like a surprise, right? Like you said, like, I looked nervous. What? For me, there was definitely, for a vast majority of my life, I spoke way too fast. Like in my house, if you couldn't talk and prove your point before dad stopped listening, like you didn't get shit. You didn't get attention. Like, you wouldn't get food. Like, it had to be fast. And like the dinner table, at my house growing up, like I bring someone home, like we're dating and get in the car to leave. And she'd look at me like, "Are they always like that? Like, is it like that all the time?" And she's like, "It was so loud and everyone's talking over each other and all this other stuff." And I was like, oh, most people don't, is not the way to communicate. So I had to learn to slow my speech down. And that took a long time, but it's the pieces of feedback that kind of matter, where you're like, for me, that was just like you said, matched up, because it was, to me, I was like, "Oh, I can do that better if I just do it slower." Mm-hmm. And it became like a personal vendetta for me to be like, "I'll communicate with you so well, you'll understand everything I ever say." I got vindictive about it. That was like young Ben. It's like, I couldn't do it unless I had a point to prove, but then it mattered.
That's totally all right. And that's the funny thing is, you talk about feedback, and most of the time I don't listen. It's just that this person who was actually giving me a compliment, and I just remember it just clicked with something else that I remember from earlier in the show that nobody had any idea that I did. And then I was like, oh. So it's being open to feedback, but it's also not even being critical of yourself, just being open yourself to think about everything.
The self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Like you said, like you noticed it, no one else did. I always love solving problems like that, by the way. It makes me feel like I got away with something when you can like course correct. before someone says anything, you're like, yeah. Of course I'm getting better. Nobody gets to give me any shit. I love that. So changing gears a little bit, I feel like you've already talked about this, but I want to ask again. Do you have like doing something live versus something pre-recorded? What do you like better? But do you have a different approach to either one of those things? I have a guess as what your answer might be, but like, what is your approach? I guess we've talked a lot about live, but for pre-recorded stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of the same, and it depends on what the event or thing is. I've done a lot of pre-recorded, like patch notes and whatnot, and you're talking to your prompter, and I draw energy from a room, and I love being nervous. Like maybe it's all the years of sports, but I think that's why I can get up on stage. That scene in Avengers where Hulk talks about always being angry. Everybody always says, you're not nervous. And I'm like, yes and no. I'm never nervous because I'm always nervous, and I just know how to turn nervousness into fun energy. Like I've played basketball in front of thousands of people. Of course you're nervous. That's like fun jitters though.
Yeah.
Everybody looks at me crazy like, you enjoy that? So pre-recorded, I don't have that same sense. So I prefer live, but I like pre-recorded too. Like it's fun to get things precisely right, and words that you figure you can't say, you somehow figure out a way to get that tongue twister together. But it really depends on the event, and if you can find a way to treat them as live, you're good to go. So Inside Xbox recorded a lot of things as live. And I remember that one of the Phil Spencer interviews that I did, I think I did too. One of them we recorded like the day before, but you treat it as live and you catch it as live. And again, I think it was because of the studio that we're in and all of PR making sure Phil doesn't mess up and that I don't ask him something that I'm not supposed to. And they're sitting there with the little notepads watching us. You find ways to make it feel as active and as fun as possible. So yeah, I prefer live, but pre-recorded can be fun too. And I get prepped for that in the same sort of way. It's like, okay, we got to do the thing. Rehearsal. So now we're doing a pre-recorded, not live thing. Okay. Yeah, whatever. And go. Okay, let's do it. So it's still the same thing. It's really the tally light. If I see the tally light on, I don't care if there's a crowd or not. You just got to go. You jump.
It's time.
Yeah.
So speaking of live events, I would probably not be doing my job very well if I didn't talk to you about GCX this year. You're coming back to host for us in person at the Rose at Shingle Creek. Before we talk about the event this year, I just like, what was it like for us? We were like, hey, do you want to come host? Oh, by the way, it's COVID. We had such a weird kind of false start on everything in 2021. So what's it been like kind of going from hosting all remote, all pre-recorded type stuff to getting ready for this like live and in-person event?
There's multiple things here. First of all, I know Emily is happy. My partner is happy because no longer am I live from our 750 square foot condo that has she's almost 6 feet. I'm 6'4", 2 humans that are that tall. My son, 2, labs that are full grown. Oh, it's terrible. She hates it. She sells drugs, right? She's in pharma, butt drugs, colonoscopy, encephalopathy. That's her thing.
Oh, all right.
And then there's me presenting like, babe, can you keep it down back there? You're talking to doctors and stuff. I got to do this event. It's like, will you shut up? And I was like, that's the presenter voice. Like, I got to be on. Yeah. So in that regard, it's cool to get out of the house. But the truth about GCX, and this was the fun one, is y'all were the folks that I was like watching and geeking out about. And like, oh, I would always pop into your stream like, this dude's fucking ridiculous at Destiny. Look at that world's first belt that he, all these things that I have going on. Like, that's crazy. And what y'all may not know is Ben long ago saw that I was coming to Tampa, and I think I was doing one of the events at Raymond James.
It was the Canon thing at Raymond James for Sea of Thieves. They were like blasting somebody for a world record.
Yep. And you saw that I was flying down, unprompted, slid into my DMs and said, hey man, we'd love to grab breakfast with you. And I remember freaking out and like, oh shit. Like, this guy wants to have breakfast with me? This guy? No way. Let's go chat it up and see. And from that, this whole crazy sort of blossoming friendship, relationship through work, whatever formed that now has me interacting with with Kevin, with Tim. I mean, I remember watching Tim. I saw a Golden Boy tweet long ago. Hey, my buddy Tim just started cracking the 100 viewer mark on Twitch. You got to check him out. The kid's wicked good at Battlefield Hardline and Titanfall.
Yeah.
The first one that long ago. And so I'm watching Tim like, man, this Darkness kid's insane at this game. He's got me wanting to play medic, and I'm not a medic at all. And so we get all the way to this point where GCX pops in the DMs. Hey, would you like to host GCX? Now at that point, I caught the vapors. I'm like, yo, no way they thought of me, like little old me. Hell yeah. So to do it in a COVID standpoint was whatever. Yeah, I missed the crowd, but at that point I was excited just to do something because again, you're stuck in the house. I ended up getting this space behind me because of COVID. Because again, I can tell you the story about, hey, look, I played Call of Duty and Destiny, and some colorful language would come out while Emily's talking to doctors, some things that she can't repeat, but I can repeat. You catch my drift.
I understand.
So we had to get this studio space, and I was like, well, I got to use it for something. All of a sudden, GCX rolls around and like, hey, fly down and do a couple of segments, and then we'll host the rest from here. Great. So to hear it's back in person, it's not the event. I feel like warm and gushy about being part of the family in that sense. Like that's the reason why I get most excited about it. I screwed up last year, right? We came down for a couple of things and I left as quick as I got there. And I felt bad for it because that's what you do when you're talent, right? You're always bouncing around from place to place and you try to get in and get out as efficiently as you can. But
Absolutely.
The way I watched you, and we're riding in Kevin's car and his wife is there, his kids are there, and then Tim's there and Amy's there and his son's there, and I'm like, oh, I screwed up. I did not know that this event was this, right? This event is friends and family, and I'm talking all of GCX, right? They've got roots back to when it was, I don't know if I can say it, but when it was Guardian Con, and I was like, that's why I go to PAX now, right? That's your friends that have become family, that are an extension of you.
Yeah.
And so when I watched everyone together, what I was most excited about was not to be in person, but was the chance for me to bring my family alongside to see what I do, what y'all do, who we're benefiting, and to see how it all works, and to join in and be a part of that larger GCX family.
Wow, that's really humbling. Thank you. I mean, we've always saw it from the beginning. Like our DNA for the event was to be the connection to bring people together from online. And then, as we grew, as people's families grew, we realized there's not like an awesome place for the whole family to go and geek out about video games. And the thing is that like the issue, like with PAX or someplace like that, like there's one thing, you're going to go there if you like video games or anime or like cosplay. I guess there's a little bit like a larger set of offering, but if you don't fit in that slice and you go out to Boston, and PAX is awesome. I'm not trying to crap on PAX. Okay. But like there's not much there for like grandpa. There's not a lot there for, like your brother that doesn't play games, your sister that doesn't care about anime. Right. But at GCX, we really wanted to make an event where like everyone can come and hang out. And so you can bring your whole family. And if only one person likes video games, great. Everyone else is on vacation in Florida. Yeah. You're at a beautiful resort. You get to hang out and you get to connect. And the thing that matters that I find the most special, and you kind of highlighted it, is we do try to make everything family focused. And I had such a difficult time growing up getting my parents to understand why video games were important to me. And they were incredibly, and the older I get, like deeply important to me for helping me like learn how to read, and a whole bunch of other things that I just don't know if I'd be able to do very well, because I, especially growing up with learning how to read, like I needed a lot of help. And so here I was in my free time playing all these RPGs, learning all these language, expanding my vocabulary, and learning about everything, in all these different worlds. And so once I finally grew up enough to share what that experience was like with my parents, they connected with it. And something that I think happens at GCX, and we've heard happened from our attendees, is that people who aren't gamers come to the event and they leave and they say, I get it. I get it. I get why my kid loves this. I get why my partner loves this. Like I understand the point of it, and like, thank you for making a space where all of us could get together and kind of understand. So it means I just want to say thank you, because your whole story meant a lot for me. So getting back to in person for this year, is there anything you're particularly excited about?
Well,
at GCX?
Every year that GCX has gone on, I've not been able to attend. We talked about the athletics and whatnot. The world's largest 3-on-3 outdoor basketball tournament happens in Spokane, Washington, and it always seems to be the same weekend, the last weekend in June. And I've gone to that, and it's crazy. There's like 250,000 players. Like, it's insane. It ranges from ages 6 all the way up to 80 if you can go.
That's right. Awesome.
Men and women. Anyway, coolest thing in the world. But I've always missed GCX, so I'm most excited just to see it. Like, I finally get to be a part of this thing that I've seen happening online over and over again. And not only do I get to see it, but I get to see it from a bird's eye view. And I'm thrilled for that. Thrilled for that.
Man, it's gonna be fun. I'm gonna watch you the whole time and be like, because it's like, you're brand new. It's your first time you're there. I'll be like, how's Rukari doing? Is he enjoying himself?
It's gonna be, where's Rukari? Isn't he supposed to be on stage? And I'm gonna
supposed to be on stage?
I'll be right there. I'm gonna check this thing out real fast.
Oh man, we're gonna have a lot of stuff for people to look at this year. Special. Gonna have a special Finding Rukari badge.
Yeah, right. Tie a bell around me, because
So when you're hosting, is it do you look back fondly on every hosting thing that you've done, or is it kind of just like, I'm on to the next thing immediately? Is there a time of reflection, I guess, after you're done hosting a gig and you're like, okay, like, I'm going to take a few minutes and like learn from this, or does that just happen in the background all the time?
You talked about being focused on Elden Ring, and people are like, why do you look angry? I've got this thing. It's called RBF to some. I call it resting blackface. But I'm always thinking, right? And my mom will get on my case at, family dinners, like, you're thinking again. I'm always sitting here. So I've often described my mind as, the meme from It's Always Sunny, where he's looking at the board and he's got the cigarette, he's wired up. That's my mind. It's not a file cabinet to where I have to go access memories. Things are up and available at all time. I have a ridiculous memory. Like, I randomly draw connections, like Cartman, when he hears the first 3 words of a song, he has to finish the song. That's me. So I'm always thinking about things, and at the same time, I'm always scared people are going to figure out that I'm having fun, and that those opportunities will go away. They're like, this guy's he's messing around. Like, you don't get to host anything else. So it's not necessarily that I'm just on to the next one. I'm always thinking about it as I'm traveling or doing whatever. And there's always weird little connections that will spark. Like the tweet that said, hey man, you looked nervous, sparked the thought of me talking crap about Larry's knees touching, which then made me think of a way to get better for the next time. So I do both. I'm definitely in my head relishing the fact that I got to do these. And when I started the crazy travel, I knew it would end, and I haven't. Super Bowl 2020. So that was Miami. That was the last event that I did for Xbox on the road. Oh no, Gears Mexico City. But I've always looked at them as fleeting. So I'm just like, I'm just going to go have fun. One day they're not going to be here. I don't know when that day is. But every time I think that, something else pops up. So it's not that I don't dwell. It's not that I don't care about them. I think about them as the need arises.
Yeah.
And just keep trying to be available for more.
I totally understand that. Like the lateral thinking, right? Someone will bring something to your attention, and it's like, for me, it's always like the Beautiful Mind music. When he's like, it's when he's like watching the pigeons and he's like doing the math in his head. It feels like you're like, yes, yeah, of course.
And then you're way out in left field, and they're like, how did you get there? And I'm like, okay, stay with me. This went to this, which went to this, which went to this, and there.
I'm really happy that I've worked with people long enough that I can like have an idea, and they're just like, okay, we trust you. Because man, when I had to explain, when they're like, why this though? I'm like, do you have 30 minutes? Because I don't want to talk that much. But yeah, like the ideas coming out of nowhere and like just sort of changing the way your whole mind thinks is like, It's awesome. So you said something, and you kind of been mentioning it the whole time, and I want to get your advice on it. So, people are looking like, I want to host, I want to go around, I want to travel. But so much wisdom when you're saying, you're there, you're having fun, it's fleeting. I know that for me, it was definitely a struggle, because I'd feel like I'd get these opportunities and I'd be like, I need to fucking crush this. And so I would go somewhere I'd never been, be around a whole bunch of cool people that I've never met before. And I would be so engaged and so focused on the task at hand that I would miss everything else. That I've traveled to so many beautiful places, and I never saw more than the inside of a hotel room and a studio. So like, what? Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was bad at it.
No, I was the same.
Oh, so, okay. What was it like kind of moving from that place to, I'm going to go somewhere, like, let's say the last thing you did, like, I'm sure maybe, Mexico City or the Super Bowl, it sounds like those were fun things to enjoy. So how do you get there?
I laugh. You talk about the fleeting thing, because it took hindsight, right? And this all ties into my work, my employment, all these things. So when I was doing these events, everybody only spoke about the Instagram post or the Twitter post that I had, or Facebook, whatever. Looks like you're having so much fun. To your point of only seeing the inside of an airplane or a hotel room, you're like, I traveled in a little tiny tube to this exotic location, sat in the hotel, did the thing, took a photo, and went back home. Like, that's literally it. Jamaica. All right. Usain Bolt. This will be a fun one. I was in Hawaii when I got a message from this guy, Kumar, who runs Xbox Lifestyle and Pop Culture, their whole LPNC group. And he was like, yo, can we get you to come to Jamaica? When are you leaving Hawaii? We need you to fly immediately to Jamaica once you're back from vacation to do this thing with Usain Bolt. And I said, nobody's going to believe that. They're not going to understand what it's going to take to get almost halfway across the world, right? From Hawaii to Seattle, to grab my stuff, to fly to Jamaica, to make it down there in a timely manner to do this shoot with Usain Bolt. So we did it anyway. But yeah, what I found is I did so many cool things, and I feel like I have nothing to show for it. And what I haven't yet figured out, or what I started to figure out, is I was never in the content biz for myself. All these things I did at the behest of an employer, Xbox. Yeah. And I said, if I want to continue to do this, you ever hear that? You have to be famous to be famous. Not that I was chasing fame, but if I wanted to host, I had to be a host. So if I wanted to be a host, I had to prove that I was hosting. So I finally got to this point where I was like, I need to bring a camera with me. But sometimes I got scared that if you take a camera with you, people are going to think that you're having fun. I was always scared of Xbox just saying, you're not working. You're out here creating stuff for you. How are you bettering the Xbox brand? And the toughest part for me to get past was when I got laid off in 2019. It had nothing to do with the hosting work. And that's what pissed me off, is because I spent 3-4 years hosting for them. And when the layoff happened, which was just for business reasons, I wasn't mad about that. But the hosting almost didn't count. And I realized that I was so worried about keeping up appearances internally, like, hey, I'm working, I'm taking meetings from these things. I'm not creating content and doing egregious shots and talking to these celebrities from my own channels. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, getting in and getting out. My advice to myself now is bring that goddamn camera along and record you and Rhonda sitting in the hair and makeup room singing to Michael Jackson. Get her to say something silly, because nobody else can do that thing for you. You have to do it for yourself. So that's where I've sort of ended up, is that to break in, to get more work, I have to do things that bolster my work, and I need to hold on to that bit tightly and not be afraid of what others are thinking. And that's still an obstacle I struggle with. And to create those things and to, view myself less as a host. And maybe this will help with hosting, but being a window into this world that other people don't get to look through. So if I think of myself as that lens and I can shine a light on what's going on, then other people have the inclination to want to watch that.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. I love you have to put yourself and your needs into the equation. That was the thing for me, is And I learned this from Kevin. Kevin is always like, oh, I'm going here. I'm going to take an extra 24 hours to enjoy it. And I was like, idiot. That's not work. But now I realize the immense wisdom that you have when you're like, okay, I'm here already. If I can push my flight 24 hours or longer, if I can like book an extra night in the hotel and actually experience where I'm at, it's going to be something that goes from just work to something that can be like personally enriching. And I was like so resistant to his way of thinking for so long. And then then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And I was just like, let me out of my house. Like I couldn't handle it. And I was just sat there every day, like regretting, like, man, I remember when I was in San Diego and I could have spent an extra 3 days there on the beach or something. And like all of these regrets. And so coming out of COVID, I definitely tried to like move myself higher on the priority list. So that way, you know, I'm doing all this stuff, which I love and is like very strong, personal, enriching. And I love that. But there's a part of all of us that isn't work. And we have to take that part of us into consideration over the long term. And I guess that's what I learned from Kevin. So you're welcome, Kevin. Now it's on.
What's funny?
It's on video.
It ebbs and flows, right? That I used to do that same thing. Like the first time they sent me to Europe, I had never been out of the country. They said, Rukari, you're going to Gamescom. And I said, bet. I'm going to stop. So you can't get a direct flight from Seattle to Cologne, right? It just does not exist. So you have to train in from somewhere. So I was like, I'm going to fly to London and I'm going to get my intro to, you know, European or other country travel. I'm not counting Mexico or Canada because they're right here. I was like, I'm going to get my intro to Europe that way, right? They speak English, won't feel completely foreign. Then I'm going to go to Germany where I speak enough German to like order food, get around the city, have a brief conversation. And then when I leave after work, I'm going to go so I spent 36 hours in London, a week in Germany. And then I spent 36 hours in France. And I was like, I'm going to go to Paris and do that. All that was great. I would do that on every trip. I would add those little hours, fly in early, leave late. But then I did that so much that I got to the opposite end. So I said it ebbs and flows, right? Then it got to be like, what the hell am I taking a 10 p.m. flight home for? I want to leave right now. I got family. Right. I got kids. I got a dog. Which brings me to the GCX bit where y'all were like, okay, and we're going to do this. And I was like, oh, damn, are we done with this rehearsal? Because my flight's in 2 hours.
Yeah. Because that's how it is. It definitely ebbs and flows. You're like, man, I can think some of the times where I was like, no, I definitely wanted to come home immediately after that. Like I needed to be home. I did so many like 24-hour turnaround flights to Twitch HQ. Where I was like leaving here at 5 a.m. and then landing back in Tampa at midnight. Yep. Oh my God. Was it
terrible?
What an idiot I was. Idiot. Oh my God. And I like wake up the next day and try and stream and I'm like, I don't know why I'm tired. I'm really glad that I don't have a doctor that's like a friend or acquaintance because they would be up my ass all the time. Like, hey, do you want to like think about taking care of yourself? Do you just like want to consider it? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Have you heard about work? Yeah. And then the whole world got shut down and I got a wake up call. So like, you know, it definitely ebbs and flows. And I kind of, that's kind of the fun part is figuring out how much room there is to play around and to put yourself into the equation and figure out, do I need a quick turnaround? Do I want to stay longer? Like, what are the things that I can change to make my experience of everything better? Yeah, we're coming up on the end of the podcast. This has been absolutely incredible. At the end, I love to let my guests advertise whatever they have going on. So if you've got anything that you have coming up that you want to let people know about, that is not GCX. We talked about that enough.
Oh, let's say there's GCX. Look.
No, we talked about that enough. No, this is for you. This is for your shit.
I'm literally, and this is going to turn into a 3 to 5 minute story, and you'll understand this as a creator. At a point where I am so mad at myself because I have not done the things that I've set out to do. I'm looking back at my YouTube analytics, and mind you, I've got 500 subscribers, and my last 5 to 7 videos have thousands of views on them. And the last one that I posted was 90 days ago. And I'm like, what the hell have I been doing? I stopped streaming. I stopped doing all these things because I was focusing on work, and I finally got to traveling again. And so even just today, coming home from Hawaii, feeling refreshed, I'm like, I'm going to go unbox a goddamn controller, and we're going to shoot this video and do this thing. And I'm going to post it all these places. So to hear you say, is there anything that I'd like to advertise? The shame comes out, and I'm like, I haven't done my job. I haven't done a damn thing. I'm going to send you somewhere and be like, last online 3 months ago, what have you been doing, sir? So no, we're going to get back into the swing of things. You know, that's just the life here. So you can come harass me on Twitter. That's where I just put my foot in my mouth constantly and talk the most random trash about shoes, sports, and life in general. But that's it. That's my one. Come harass me and tell me to be a better creator and to do the things that I enjoy doing. Stop putting it on an editor. I used to be like, if I just got an editor, I would do all these things. And goddamn, I can't find an editor out there. But why should I have to find an editor? Rukari, go edit your own stuff, right? Nobody's going to take care of you but you. That's me talking to me right now.
No, that inner voice pep talk sounds hauntingly familiar to my inner voice. So, well, there you go, everybody. Please go check out Rukari Austin everywhere he's making content. I know he's like, I don't have anything new. Well, that's just your chance to get in on the ground floor. Okay, we're talking about revolutionary, proven content creator and host that has decades of experience in the game, and now they're gonna take all of this awesome knowledge and make the best content for you. So it's time. So go follow Rukari absolutely everywhere you can. As for me, I'm Professor Broman. You can put me in the Google thing, and I'll show up wherever you want me to. Please. If you want to rate or subscribe to this podcast, that's awesome. But more importantly, if you thought of somebody while we were talking today, please share this podcast with them. Because the whole point we do this is to take all of the awesome knowledge and wisdom that we have from all of our guests and share it with people. So please do that, and I would be deeply appreciative. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.